The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast space. Captain Lee Minho walked forward, his boots clicking against the polished floor made from some alien crystal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Behind him, his officers followed in perfect formation, Commander Park Jin-woo on his left, Dr. Kim Yuna on his right, and the rest of his diplomatic team spread out in a neat line. The chamber was enormous, easily the size of 10 football fields, with a domed ceiling that stretched so high it disappeared into darkness. Floating platforms held representatives from dozens of different alien species, each one looking down at the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others had multiple eyes, and a few looked like they were made of living metal. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Kethra of the Zephyrian Collective. She was tall and thin, her body covered in what looked like living crystal that changed colors as she moved. Her face was sharp and angular, with no nose and eyes that glowed like blue stars. When she spoke, her voice carried across the chamber without any need for amplification. "The trial of the human species begins now," she announced, her crystalline features reflecting the dim lighting that came from sources Minho could not identify. "Stand accused of crimes against galactic peace?" Minho kept his face blank. But inside he was calculating. They had known this day would come. Humanity had expanded too fast, claimed too many worlds, and made too many enemies among the established galactic powers. The other species saw humans as dangerous newcomers who did not know their place. "The evidence is clear," Kethra continued, gesturing to a holographic display that appeared in the air above them. Images flashed by human colonies uncontested, worlds, human ships, and disputed space. Human miners extracting resources from planets that other species claimed as their own. Excessive territorial expansion. Violation of 17 separate peace protocols. Aggressive behavior toward established civilizations. Commander Park Jin-woo shifted slightly beside Minho, his hand moving closer to his sidearm. But Minho gave him a barely visible shake of the head. Violence would not help them here. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, and the chamber was filled with security forces from a dozen different species. "The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision," Kethra said, and Minho could hear the satisfaction in her voice. She was enjoying this. "The species known as humans is hereby found guilty of all charges." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Some of them made sounds that might have been approval, while others remained silent. Minho noticed that not all of them looked happy about this decision. A few of the smaller species seemed nervous, perhaps worried about what this meant for their own future dealings with the Council. "The sentence," Kethra continued, "is exile to Kepler-4 for to see. Designation Class X, Deathworld." Now the murmurs became gasps. Even some of the alien delegates seemed shocked by this pronouncement. Minho felt his officers tense behind him, but he kept his own expression neutral. They had prepared for this possibility. "You understand, of course," Kethra said, her glowing eyes fixed on Minho, "that no species has ever survived more than 3 cycles on that world. The gravity will crush your bones, the atmosphere will burn your lungs. The native life forms will hunt you for sport. Perhaps this will teach your kind the humility that diplomacy could not." Dr. Kim Yuna took a small step forward, her scientific mind already working on the problem. Minho could almost hear her thoughts racing as she calculated atmospheric compositions, gravity differentials, and survival probabilities. She had been studying the reports on Kepler-4 to see for months, preparing for exactly this scenario. "The Council's decision is final," Kethra announced.
I'll see you.
"You have 30 standard days to evacuate all human presence from contested territories. Transport ships will be provided to carry your people to their new home. Any human found in galactic space after that time will be considered a hostile combatant." As the verdict was sealed with some kind of ceremonial gesture that involved flashing lights and harmonic tones, Minho exchanged a brief glance with Dr. Kim Yuna. Her slight nod was almost invisible, but it confirmed what he already knew. Their contingency plans were already in motion. The emergency protocols had been activated the moment they entered the chamber. The aliens thought they were delivering a death sentence. They thought they were getting rid of a troublesome species by sending them to a world that would kill them, slowly and painfully. But they had made a critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that humans would react to Kepler-4 for to see the same way every other species had. They were wrong. As the council delegates began to disperse, chattering among themselves in dozens of different languages, Minho allowed himself a small smile. The aliens had just given humanity exactly what it needed, a world where they could grow stronger without interference, a world where they could become something new. The aliens had just made their greatest mistake, the transport ship. New Hope shuddered as it entered the outer atmosphere of Kepler-4 for to see. Captain Lee. Minho gripped the armrest of his command chair, watching the view screen as their new home grew larger and more terrifying with each passing moment. The planet looked like something from a nightmare. Dark clouds swirled in massive storms that could swallow entire continents. The surface below was covered in what looked like black glass formations that stretched as far as the eye could see. Gravity readings are confirmed at 2.4 times Earth standard, reported Lieutenant Park Soman from her station. Atmosphere is 30% more dense than Earth, with high concentrations of sulfur compounds and trace amounts of methane. Behind Minho, Dr. Kim Yuna was practically bouncing with excitement despite the heavy gravity that was already making everyone feel like they were carrying extra weight. "This is fascinating," she said, her eyes glued to her scanner readings. "The atmospheric pressure will force our bodies to adapt. The gravity will make our bones denser, our muscles stronger. We're looking at the perfect natural training environment." Commander Park Jinwoo looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Doctor, this planet is supposed to kill us. The council sent us here to die." "Exactly," Yuna replied with a grin. "That's what makes it perfect. No other species could survive here, which means no other species has ever had the chance to adapt to these conditions. We're going to become something completely new." The first shuttle launched from the transport ship with a dozen colonists aboard. Minho watched through the camera feeds as it descended through the churning atmosphere, buffeted by winds that would tear apart most aircraft. Lightning crackled through the clouds, not the familiar yellow-white of Earth lightning, but a strange blue-green color that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. Shuttle 1 reporting, came the voice of pilot Kim Ji-won through the comm system. "We're through the worst of it. I can see the landing site. It's a crater about 2 kilometers wide, surrounded by those crystal formations. The ground looks stable." As the shuttle touched down, Minho felt a moment of pride. They had made it. The first humans were now on the surface of a world that was supposed to be their grave. Through the camera feeds, he watched as the colonists stepped out of the shuttle, their movements slow and careful in the crushing gravity. "It's like trying to walk underwater," reported colonist Lee Hansel through his helmet. "Come, but we can do it. The suits are holding up fine against the atmospheric corrosion." Within hours, more shuttles had landed, and the colonists were beginning to set up their first settlement. They had chosen a relatively flat area inside the crater, and were calling it Iron Valley. The name seemed fitting. Everything on this world seemed to be made of metal and stone, with no sign of the green plants or blue skies that humans were used to. Dr. Kim Yuna was among the first to set foot on the surface, her scientific instruments in hand. "The mineral composition is incredible," she reported. "These crystal formations aren't just pretty, they're some kind of super strong material. If we can learn to work with them, we could build structures that would be impossible on Earth." That's when they met their first neighbors. The creatures came out of nowhere, emerging from cracks in the crystal formations like living nightmares. They were the size of earth bears, but covered in what looked like natural armor plating that gleamed like polished metal. Their eyes were bright yellow, and when they opened their mouths, the colonists could see rows of teeth that looked like they were made of the same crystal material as the ground. "Contact," shouted Security Chief Park Youngman. "We've got hostile life forms approaching the perimeter." The first creature reared up on its hind legs and opened its mouth wide. Instead of a roar, it spat out a stream of liquid that hissed and bubbled when it hit the ground. The rock where it landed began to smoke and dissolve. Concentrated acid, Dr. Yuna observed with scientific fascination, even as she backed away. They're using it as a weapon. The colonists had prepared for this. They had studied every available report on Kepler-4 for to see, and they knew the planet was home to predators that had evolved to be living weapons. They had brought energy shields and plasma rifles, and they knew how to use them. The battle was brief, but intense. The acid-spitting creatures were fast and dangerous, but they had never faced humans before. The colonists worked together, using their shields to deflect the acid attacks while their weapons found weak spots in the creatures' armor. When it was over, 3 of the creatures lay dead, and the rest had retreated back into the crystal formations. The colonists had suffered no casualties, though several suits had been damaged by acid splashes. "Well," said Commander Park Jinwoo, looking at the dead creatures, "I guess we know what's for dinner." Dr. Yuna was already taking samples. "Protein content is probably excellent. And look at this armor plating. If we can learn to work with this material, we could make our own protective gear." Later that day, as the sun set over their new home, casting strange shadows through the crystal formations, Captain Lee Minho sent a message back to the Galactic Council monitoring station. It was brief and to the point, landing successful. "Thank you for the training facility. The real work was just beginning." The alarm clock in Iron Valley Settlement rang at dawn. But it was not the gentle chime that people on Earth might remember. It was a harsh metallic sound that cut through the thick atmosphere like a blade. Captain Lee Minho, now calling himself colony leader, rolled out of his bed and immediately felt the familiar weight of the planet's gravity pressing down on his shoulders. 2 years ago, this feeling had been exhausting. Now it felt natural. He walked to the window of his quarters and looked out at what had once been an empty crater. The view that greeted him would have been impossible to imagine when they first landed. Tall buildings made of the planet's black crystal material rose toward the stormy sky, their surfaces gleaming with an inner light that seemed to pulse with life. Between the buildings, humans moved with a fluid grace that spoke a perfect adaptation to their harsh environment. But these were not the same humans who had arrived 2 years ago. These people were different, stronger, faster, more resilient. Their muscles were clearly defined even through their clothing, and their bones had grown dense enough to handle the crushing gravity without strain. Children who had been born on Kepler 442c looked like small athletes, capable of feats that would be impossible for Earth children. Morning colony leader called out Park Soo-jin, one of the first children born on the planet. She was only 18 months old, but she was already walking with the confident stride of someone much older. As Minho watched, she picked up a rock that would have been heavy even for an adult on Earth, and threw it with perfect accuracy at a target 30 meters away. "Good morning, Soo-jin," Minho replied, still amazed by what the children could do. "How are your parents?" "They're out hunting with the acid bears," she said matter-of-factly. "They should be back with breakfast soon?" The acid bears were what the colonists called the creatures that had attacked them on their first day. It had taken months of careful work, but Dr. Kim Yuna had figured out how to domesticate the smaller ones now. They served as hunting companions, their natural acid weapons, making them perfect for tracking and bringing down the larger predators that roamed the crystal formations. The larger acid bears had become livestock. Their meat was incredibly nutritious, packed with proteins and minerals that helped the human body adapt to the planet's harsh conditions. Their armor plating could be processed into protective gear that was stronger than anything they had brought. From Earth, colony leader, came a voice from his communication device. It was Commander Park Jinwoo, though his title had changed over the past 2 years. "General Park here. We have new arrivals from the transport ship. They're ready for orientation." Minho smiled. The orientation process had become quite a show. "On my way, General." He made his way to the settlement's central training area, where a group of 20 new colonists stood looking nervous and overwhelmed. They had just arrived from Earth, and the gravity was clearly affecting them. Some were having trouble standing upright. Others were breathing heavily from the effort of simply walking. General Park Jinwoo stood before them, his own transformation visible to anyone who looked closely. His frame had filled out considerably. His muscles developed to handle the planet's demands. His eyes held the confidence of someone who had not just survived in hell, but had learned to thrive there. "Welcome to Kepler 442C," he announced too. The new arrivals. "You're probably wondering if you're going to die here. The answer is no, not if you follow our program." He gestured to a group of colonists who had been there for over a year. They were participating in what looked like a casual morning exercise routine, but to the new arrivals, it must have seemed impossible. They were running through an obstacle course that included dodging acid sprays from domesticated creatures, leaping over crystal formations that were 20 feet high, and carrying weights that would have been impossible to lift on Earth. "Every morning run is through a hazard course," General Park explained to the wide-eyed newcomers. "Every hunt is tactical training. Every day of survival makes you stronger. This planet isn't trying to kill you, it's trying to forge you into something better." One of the new arrivals, a woman named Kim Soyan, raised her hand. "General, this looks impossible." "How are they doing that?" "The same way you will in 6 months," Park replied. "The gravity here forces your body to adapt. Your bones become denser, your muscles stronger. The atmosphere makes your lungs more efficient. Constant challenges sharpen your reflexes and your mind." Dr. Kim Yuna appeared at the edge of the training area, carrying a piece of equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. It was made from the processed crystal material that she had learned to work with, and it seemed to glow with its own inner energy. "The real breakthrough," she called out to the group, "is in the materials. These crystal formations aren't just pretty rocks. They're a form of matter that doesn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. We can make buildings that are stronger than anything on Earth, tools that can cut through metal like paper, and weapons that ... Let's just say the Galactic Council would be very interested in our progress." High above the planet, monitoring stations belonging to the Galactic Council detected the massive construction projects taking place on the surface. The energy signatures were off the charts, and the materials being used were unlike anything in their databases. Their worst fears were being confirmed. The humans weren't just surviving their exile, were building something unprecedented. But down on the surface, humans were just getting started. The massive Galactic Council warship Judgment's Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442C system, its hull gleaming with the dark metal that marked it as a vessel of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Commander Veltar, a towering figure from the hegemony species with 6 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dim light of the bridge, stood before the main view screen with barely contained anticipation. 3 years, he said to his mixed species crew, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered dozens of worlds. 3 years since we sent the humans to their deaths. Today we confirm that justice has been served. The ship's sensors began their sweep of the planet, and almost immediately, the readings began to confuse the crew, instead of the dead silence they expected from a world that had claimed every species sent to it. They were detecting massive energy signatures that pulsed with unfamiliar rhythms. Commander called out the ship's science officer. A being that looked like a walking jellyfish with too many tentacles. We're detecting artificial structures on the surface. Large ones. And there are ships in orbit designs I've never seen. Before Veltar's red eyes narrowed, "Impossible. Show me." The view screen filled with an image that made several crew members step back in shock. The planet below was not the empty wasteland they had expected. Instead, they could see what looked like a thriving civilization. Tall spires of black crystal reached toward the stormy sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float without any visible support. Ships moved between the structures with an ease that suggested advanced technology. "There must be some mistake," Veltar said. "Perhaps another species colonized the planet after the humans died." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "We're being hailed. The signal is coming from the surface." "Put it through," Veltar ordered. The face that appeared on the screen was human. But it was not the face of a desperate survivor. The man who looked back at them had been transformed by his years on the Deathworld. His muscles were clearly defined even through his clothing, and his skin had a slight metallic sheen that spoke of adaptation to the planet's unique environment. But it was his eyes that truly unsettled the alien crew. They held the confidence of someone who had faced the impossible and won. This is Colonial Administrator Lee Min-ho, the human said with a smile that made several species on the bridge step back from their stations. Welcome to Kepler-4 for to see. We've been expecting you. Beltar found his voice after a moment of stunned silence. You're alive. How many survivors are there? Survivors? Min-ho laughed, a sound that carried no humor. Commander, we're not survivors. We're colonists. We have over 15,000 people here now, with more arriving every month. The alien commander felt a chill run through his body. That's impossible. No species has ever survived more than 3 cycles on that world. No other species has. Ever been human? Min-ho replied simply. We'd love to show you what we've built here. Permission to land? Against every instinct telling him to turn around and flee, Veltar found himself agreeing. Permission granted, but we're coming armed. Of course you are, Min-ho said, his smile growing wider. We'd expect nothing less. Landing party that. Descended to the surface consisted of 20 of the galaxy's most elite soldiers, representing 5 different species and carrying enough firepower to level a small city. But as their shuttle touched down on the landing pad, a structure made of the same black crystal as the buildings around it, they realized they were completely outmatched. The city that surrounded them was unlike anything in the galaxy. The spires reached incredible heights, their surfaces seeming to pulse with inner light. The bridges that connected them appeared to be made of pure energy, somehow solidified into a form that could support massive weight. And everywhere they looked, humans moved with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect adaptation to their environment. This way, please, said Dr. Kim Yuna, who had approached their landing party with what looked like an escort of domesticated monsters. The creatures were the size of bears, covered in natural armor that gleamed like polished metal, and their eyes held an intelligence that suggested they were more than simple animals. As they walked through the city, the alien visitors saw things that defied their understanding. Humans carrying loads that should have been impossible to lift. Construction workers building structures without the use of heavy machinery, their own enhanced strength sufficient for the task. And everywhere, the sound of children playing games that would have been considered advanced military training on most worlds. The children, whispered one of the alien soldiers, pointing at a group of youngsters who were playing some kind of tag game that involved leaping between platforms, 40 feet in the air while dodging streams of acid from training devices. Here. Having fun? Dr. Yuna explained cheerfully. The gravity here makes them incredibly strong, and the constant challenges have sharpened their reflexes. What you're seeing is just normal childhood play. Commander Veltar watched a child who could not have been more than 8 years old jump a distance that would have been impossible for an adult of his species. The child landed gracefully, laughed, and immediately leaped again, this time even farther. This is not possible, he said. Commander Min-ho said, appearing beside him. You sent us here to die. Instead, you gave us the greatest gift in the galaxy, a world where we could become something more than we ever imagined. The alien commander realized with growing horror that they had not eliminated a threat. They'd created one. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with a sense of panic that had not been felt in over 1,000 years. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great chamber, their voices creating a cacophony of fear and confusion that echoed off the crystalline walls. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Kethra, her normally composed features twisted with an emotion that few had ever seen from her kind terror. The reports are confirmed, she announced, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The humans have not only survived on Kepler-4 for 2C, they have thrived. What we intended as their execution has become their transformation into something beyond our worst nightmares. The holographic display above the chamber showed images that made several delegates gasp in horror. Humans moving with impossible speed and grace, lifting weights that should have crushed them, building structures that defied the laws of physics as the Council understood them. But most terrifying of all were the children youngsters who played games that would have been lethal to any other species. We must act immediately, Kethra continued, her crystalline features reflecting the panic in the chamber. The humans cannot be allowed to leave that world. We must blockade the system, cut off all contact, and ensure that whatever they have become remains trapped there forever. But even as she spoke, reports were coming in from across the galaxy that made her words ring hollow. Human ships had been spotted in the most dangerous regions of space, places where even the bravest council species feared to venture. These vessels moved with a speed and agility that made the fastest. Council ships looked like ancient relics drifting through space. On the bridge of the exploration vessel, Ironwill, Captain Park Suman guided her ship through an asteroid field that would have been impossible for any normal pilot to navigate. The asteroids were moving at tremendous speeds, colliding and breaking apart in patterns that changed every second. But to her, enhanced by 3 years of life on Kepler-4 for to see, it was just another day at work. Captain called out her navigator. "Lee Taiyun, we're getting a distress signal from a council research station. They're trapped in the gravity well of a dying star." Park Suman smiled, the expression carrying the confidence of someone who had faced worse dangers every day of her life. "Set course for the research station. Let's go save some lives." The rescue operation that followed became legend throughout the galaxy. The Council research station was caught in gravitational forces that were slowly pulling it toward a star that was in the process of collapsing. The rescue ships sent by the Council had been forced to turn back when the gravitational stresses began to tear their hulls apart. But the human ship Ironwill plunged into the deadly zone without hesitation, its hull made from the processed crystal materials of Kepler-4 for to see, held together under forces that would have destroyed any other vessel. Captain Park Suman maneuvered through gravitational fields that bent space itself, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to react to changes that happened faster than most species could even detect. Within hours, all 200 researchers from the doomed station had been evacuated to safety. The rescue operation was broadcast across the galaxy. The message was clear. The humans had become something that no other species could match, but the humans were not seeking revenge for their exile. Instead, they were seeking new challenges. Trading posts began appearing in the most dangerous regions of space, near unstable wormholes, in the path of cosmic storms, and in systems where the radiation levels would have been fatal to any other species. The humans didn't just survive in these places. They thrived. When the Galactic Council sent a formal protest about humanity's expansion into restricted zones, the response came not from a desperate colony begging for forgiveness, but from someone calling himself Expedition Leader Lee Minho. His message was broadcast across the galaxy, and it would be remembered for generations to come. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began, his image showing a man who had been transformed by his years on the Deathworld. "We want to thank you for the gift of Kepler-4 for 2C. We have never felt more at home. The world you chose is our prison has become our training ground, and we are grateful for the opportunity you provided." He paused, and his smile grew wider. "We've been exploring our local cluster and have identified several other death worlds that look promising for expansion. We appreciate you showing us that the galaxy has such wonderful real estate opportunities. We look forward to turning these challenging worlds into thriving human colonies." The message ended, but its impact was felt throughout the galaxy. The species that had been banished for being too aggressive had become the galaxy's premier peacekeepers, not through diplomacy or politics, but through the simple fact that nothing in the known universe could match a human forged in the fires of a death world in the most dangerous regions of space, where pirates and raiders had once ruled without challenge. Human-operated trading posts now provided safe harbor for any species willing to trade fairly. The humans didn't conquer these areas through military might. They simply moved in and made it clear that anyone who caused trouble would have to deal with beings who considered asteroid fields a minor inconvenience. The final entry in the colonial records of Kepler-4 for to see was made by Dr. Kim Yuna, now serving as the colony's chief scientist. Her words would be quoted in history books for centuries to come. Day 1247 of exile. "The children are asking if we can find a more challenging planet. I fear we may have created something magnificent. The galaxy would never be the same."